Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this FP&A Trends webinar, where today we'll be looking at mastering analytical transformation with the FP&A Trends Maturity Model. My name is Hans Gobin. I'm the facilitator for today, and I'm glad to inform you that we are joined by over 350 people from around 49 countries in the world. So very exciting agenda we've got for you here. So what are we going to look at today? We are, of course, going to talk a little bit about FP&A Trends Maturity Model, a general overview, and then a bit of detail, but most of that will be for you to consume, after the call once you get the slide. We will look at mastering transformation, a really good case study from HEINEKEN. We will then go on to look at Lyft, again, their transformation journey. And the final presentation will be the key blocks of transformation and the success factors. We will then conclude and look at a recommendation from our panelists. And then finally, we will go on to our exciting Q&A session at the end. So it is now a good time for me to introduce our speakers. So panelists, speakers, I would like you to come and join me. Put your webcam on, please. And let me start by introducing our first speaker today is going to be Peter van Losbroek, who is Global Process Lead FP&A at the HEINEKEN Company, based in Amsterdam, Netherlands, where he's joining us from today. And of course, he's going to talk about mastering transformation. In particular, what has he been doing at HEINEKEN? Peter, it's fantastic to have you on the panel today.
Thanks, Hans. Happy to be in this webinar.
Thank you very much, Peter. We move on to our second speaker today, Aurélien Nolf, who is Vice President, Head of FP&A at Lyft. Of course, he's based in San Francisco in the USA, and today he will talk to us about his transformation journey at Lyft. Aurélien, great to have you on the panel today as well.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Thank you, Aurélien. And finally, we move on to Jan Hill, who is Business Transformation Advisory at Pigment, based out in Houston in the USA. And today she'll take us through transformation success factors. Jan, great to have you with us today.
Thank you for including me in the discussion. Happy to be here.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jan. Ladies and gentlemen, we have three great speakers and we have three fantastic set of slides and insight waiting for you just shortly after we've done a little bit of housekeeping. So I'll ask my panelists to turn their webcam off for a bit and let me go through a bit of housekeeping. So let me introduce to you our technology sponsor for today, Pigment. We all know Pigment, business planning platform for fast-growing companies. So thank you, Pigment. Little bit about FP&A Trends Group. I think we all quite adept and know a bit about FP&A Trends Group, but we are now glad to let you know we are in 33 cities, 19 countries, 4 continents. The last few we've added have been Miami, Munich, Helsinki, Riyadh, and Milan. So if you are in any of these cities, any of the 33 cities, when we're having our meeting, face-to-face meeting, please do come and join us. We also do FP&A Insight, as you know, through all of our FP&ATrends.com community, through the webinars, which you are on, LinkedIn group, and of course, our digest. And finally, FP&A Education, Research and Consulting, through all of those various means out there. So please do join us in any one of them. So what have we got ourselves into today? So 1 hour webinar, we have 2 polling questions. We want you to participate. So we want to know what you're doing on those transformation that we're going to talk about. We have a 10 minutes Q&A session at the end. So we want you to ask questions, ask via the chat box, specify to which panelists you want the question to go as well. The presentation is available for you to download in the handout section. If you don't, you will still get a copy and the recording after the meeting. Finally, when I close the meeting, there is a brief feedback survey session. So please spend 30 seconds or so, tell us how we did, but also tell us what are the topics you would like to hear from us in the future as well. Now, a little bit of an introduction. Of course, maturity is the capacity to endure uncertainty, from John Houston Finlay. This is a fantastic quote which sets the scene very, very well for us today. And this is a bit of a highlight on what are the main obstacles to FP&A analytical transformation. I think, the slide says it all, but I will not run through the slide as the panelists are going to cover quite a bit of this today. So please digest this in your own time. Bit about FP&A Trends Maturity Model. A lot of you will know of it, and a lot of you are using it already. It was born in 2016. Started with London FP&A board, but now we have collaboration of over 30 FP&A boards in 16 countries. It has comprehensive insight, including case studies, interviews, advice from senior practitioners and thought leaders. It has merged insight with 7 years worth of data and surveys from over 2,000 respondents as well. Of course, it gives us a global perspective, and it helps you to benchmark your company and help you to take it to that next level in transformation, of course. What does it do? Dual function tool for benchmarking and intelligent transformation. So take a look at it. The key traits of the FP&A maturity model, you can see at the top there's 3 states broken down into 5 levels, and you have 6 capabilities. So leadership, skills and capabilities, business partnering, which are the softer side, and then the harder side, which is process, data, analytics, and technology. And this is the model in detail. So you can see how it's broken down in each one of them, just to take an example there. So leadership is broken down into planning and approach, and you can see what the leading organizations are doing in those. So they're fully aligned strategic, business, and operational plan. They run a culture of change. They are champions in coaching, mentoring, and growth. They are a collaborative organization. They have a very strategic focus spanning products, service, life cycle. So I can talk about this all day long, but today is not about this. Of course, it's about this, but not about me. So please have a look at this if you haven't had a look at this before, and consume it in your own time. Now, let me introduce our first speaker for today once more. So Peter van Losbroek is our first speaker from HEINEKEN, and he's going to talk to us about his transformation journey. So over to you, Peter, whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Hans. I'm ready. Yes. Yeah. Thanks, Hans, for showing this slide. So before we, I want to show you so what kind of journey we're on FP&A within the HEINEKEN organization. I think it's good to tell a little bit about myself. I'm 25 years in the finance areas in commerce and supply chain. Worked for a candy company, switched to Coca-Cola, and finally to HEINEKEN. During my time at Coca-Cola, I more or less changed my role and placed myself a bit more outside the finance governance cycle execution to focus really on, okay, how can we optimize the process and how can we identify value potential, because it's if you're in the middle of a governance cycle, it's sometimes very difficult to spend enough time on that. So I was doing that. I continued doing that for HEINEKEN. HEINEKEN is a big organization, historically grown by acquiring a lot of breweries. So you can imagine that with so many people and different systems that are, it's like having a legacy of different systems, that it's not always easy to do FP&A in the same kind of way. And that's also something that we are trying to do within HEINEKEN. So we're trying to have a clear standardized process of doing FP&A. So I'm heading the team. of FP&A in the Global Process Ownership Department. It's a department within finance. We see business control as the function and FP&A as the activity. As said, we're optimizing the process and we're not part of the finance governance cycle execution. That's important. And we see ourselves as a linking pin of many teams. So with the business, with business control, but also with the transactional process like order to cash, purchase to pay, record to report, etc. So, and many more teams that we have to align with. So I think that gives a bit of a picture of what I did, what I'm doing now, and how the team is positioned in the Heineken organization. So on the next slide, you see a picture of explaining what our ambition is. So this is our FP&A process ambition. So we try to balance and improve on all elements. So it has to do with process standardization, organization, but also automation. I think that's also a bit of the sequence that we try to follow. First, have clear what is it, how are we going to do it, with whom, is it positioned in the operation, or do we want to use a shared service center for that? And also, how can we automate? Next to that, for us, it's important to track our process. So to look at governance and performance. Rewards and recognition in the system is important, and people development, and especially people development is something that is important for FP&A, as it is not a transactional process. There are many ways to do FP&A. So that all comes down to this one ambition sentence, which we spent some time on to put this on paper, but I think it still makes sense and it's pretty robust, and we can work with this for the coming years. So on the next slide, you see that we have increased focus on how to do FP&A. I already mentioned it. It can be done in many ways, especially when you're a big organization with a lot of companies in that organization. It can be done in many ways. So we developed a framework, the Heineken FP&A framework. So very clearly answering 5 questions. So looking back, what did happen? Why did it happen? What we think will happen, but also the ambition, what we want to happen, and how do we make it happen? So that gives us a clear guidance on doing FP&A, and of course that's a lot of knowledge content, and it has to be done in combination with skills and behaviors. So we're partnering a lot with our learning and capability team to make sure that not only the knowledge content is properly covered, but also the skills and behaviors. So it's documentation on explaining how to do FP&A with rules, guidelines, use cases. It's for our business controllers, and it's for our FP&A experts in the shared service centers, but also people outside finance who are using FP&A data. Why we need it? I think it really helps us in making more crystal clear what are the business requirements, really reflecting what are the decision-making situations that we're trying to cover. And it helps us doing that in our design. So design for our processes, we should be organized, and also how technology should be designed and built. It helps us in deploying this. So making more clear, okay, how to use that data, how to use the technology. It gives you really tangible stuff to take with you in your organization, and it helps us in further optimizing the approach of tracking our FP&A maturity. So it helps us to really do this in a systematic way. Coming to that, on the next slide, we are addressing the PNVA maturity. So how to do that? So we are currently developing a maturity assessment model to extend our toolkit. We call it our FP&A toolkit. We are leveraging on the FP&A Trends documentation, the model that Hans was showing earlier. So that really helps us. We have a couple of things in there in the toolkit. So it's about process and organization, taxonomies, roles, different solutions that we have. Solutions, for example, to allocate our costs by customer, by product. We're tracking performance in our process health dashboard. The framework, which I mentioned, I explained on the previous slide, and then finally the maturity assessment. And the model that we see in front of us is really a model that will help us to identify the as-is, the different improvement areas, but also the plans to come to the target state. It's building on our dimensions, on our ambition dimensions, which I showed earlier. So our processes, the organization, technology, process performance, people and competences, and rewards and recognition. And what I said, we are really looking at, okay, what is FP&A Trends Maturity Model doing? How can we leverage on that, and how can we include that in our model and optimize as good as possible all the external views outside the Heineken organization? Especially on the process performance, I see that we have a lot of effort on that. I think that's something maybe also for the maturity model for FP&A Trends to reconsider, but of course it's a challenge. FP&A, it's not a transactional process, how to track that performance, but we make the attempt. So we want to deploy this globally, this maturity assessment model, having a 360 feedback. So really looking at the controllers, but also get the view from the business stakeholders. So to have that 360 view, we want to set ambition with it, and come up with a roadmap and action plans. And we want to connect the maturity with our process performance. So logically, the higher the maturity, the higher the process performance, but also the vice versa. So if we see high process performance, then probably there also should be high maturity. So this is something that is for us very valuable and good insights that we want to leverage. I think that is it from my side. So giving you a bit of insight in what we're doing in FP&A and how do we want to increase our FP&A maturity in our organization.
Brilliant. Peter, thank you very much. Great presentation. I like the way, you started with ambition and of course, what is that framework that you develop, but more importantly, how are you assessing it all with the maturity model and the close link that your model has with the FP&A trend model. Of course, it's evolutionary and things will change, things will have to be adapted. So there is no one model that fits all. So absolutely, thank you very much for that. And now, ladies and gentlemen, that we've heard from Peter about his model and what he's doing, let me now launch our first polling question so we can try and see what you guys are doing in your organization. If you can all please vote, we want to know, are you spending the desired amount of time on improving your FP&A processes and maturity with the right sort of speed within your organization? A first option there is yes, we have dedicated transformation sitting outside of finance. Secondly, yes, we do this transformation within finance. And thirdly, no, we are not spending enough time on transformation, but are thinking about it. So ladies and gentlemen, please let us know, are you spending the desired time on improving your FP&A process and maturity with the right speed? Yes, we have a dedicated transformation team sitting outside of FP&A. Yes, we do this transformation, but within finance, no, we are not spending enough time. I will now close the voting and I will share the results with everyone. And the results are as follows. 4% says, yes, we have a dedicated transformation team, but they're sitting outside on their own. 37 say, we do this transformation from within finance, and 59% say, no, we're not spending enough time on transformation. Peter, can I come to you and ask you for a bit of feedback on this polling question, Peter, please?
Yeah, no, sure. So this is a very interesting view. First of all, thanks for giving your vote. I think this will be, well, I think it also helps you. It helps me definitely. So coming back to the 4%, I can also imagine that it depends also on the size of the organization. So for us, a company as Heineken with 90,000 employees and around 1,000 controllers, it's something that we really have to be dedicated on. And so I can also imagine that has also to do with the size of the organization, this result. And then the other one, so looking at the last answer, we're not spending enough time on transformation, 59%. Well, I think that is pretty high. I think there is yeah, a lot of potential. I think FP&A is so much in development. So yeah, interesting to see that there's still 60% yeah, not spending time on a transformation. Yeah, I think good insights. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for that, Peter. It tells us quite a lot here, doesn't it, in terms of the potential that we have. Let us now move on to our discussion question, and I'll like to ask the other panelists to come and join us as well. And we've seen how skills and behaviors are molded within finance, within FP&A in Heineken. But what is the biggest people challenge you have faced during your transformation, and how did we deal with this? If I may ask Aurélien to answer this first, please. Aurélien, your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. I guess everything starts, with the team and the people we have on the team. I think the biggest challenge we've been facing is, aligning the skill set of our teams with, the new challenges of the FP&A functions, including, managing the data and being able to analyze the data. So that's something I touched on this during my presentation, but that's something we are very focused on.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Jan, can I come to you, please?
Yes, absolutely. So it is a great question, and people is always, going to be top of mind, and certainly a challenge throughout any transformation. I think for me, when I look at the maturity model, the leading practice on the leadership side is a leader who's creating a culture of change. And I think that culture of change aspect is very important when it comes to people, because culture is not, it can be driven from the top, but it needs to be adopted. So I think that challenge of making sure that you've found the right change allies throughout the organization and you bring them along on the journey is a critical aspect to making sure that your transformation is successful.
Absolutely spot on. Thank you very much for that insight. Now we close off with you, Peter.
So I agree. I think it's a combination. I think it's a combination of explaining, well, in our case, how to do FP&A and give guidance on that. And I can imagine that you're used to a certain way of working, and to have that change mindset. But I think it's also important that you have your senior leaders behind it, and they also communicate it, and they say, hey, we really need to innovate, and that's a bit what I'm seeing. Well, there's a lot of focus on technology, but I think also on our process, we can be more innovative, and that's, well, change management is then playing an important role. So it's a combination. Yeah.
Absolutely spot on. Absolutely spot on. So thank you very much for the insight and answering the question. Can I now move on to our next session, which is from Aurélien? So let us turn our webcam off, and Aurélien North is VP at and head of FP&A at Lyft, and today he will be talking to us about Lyft FP&A transformation journey. Over to you, Aurélien.
Thank you. Yeah, and before we jump in, just gonna introduce myself briefly. So I've been with Lyft for 18 months. Joined the company with, so Lyft is a rideshare company. We are based in the US and Canada, so a North America centric business for now. And the company, like, very, very different, from what Peter showed us about Heineken, because we are a young company. Like, we've been created 10 years ago and went from 0 to $16 billion of bookings in a very short period of time. And so the context here is the company growing fast. People were just trying to kind of survive and make sure they would implement, like, very basic processes, dealing with the cash, making sure the accounting processes would be up to speed. We became a public company in 2019, so all the IPO process has also been quite disruptive for the team. And so the reason why I joined Lyft is because there was a pretty big challenge for us to implement the best-in-class FP&A processes, which I've been able to learn at Electronic Arts, where I spent 17 years of my career. So if we go on the next slide, I'm gonna first discuss about the initial maturity assessment that we undertook when I joined the company, and we actually used the FP&A Trend Maturity Assessment Model to do that, because I was already a part of this group. And we've been looking at all of our processes and try to give ourselves like a rating of where we were placed on this matrix. And so what I found when I joined the company is a lot of manual and non-standardized processes, starting with our long-range planning process. And so it was very inconsistent, very inefficient, a lot of manual work, very, very time-consuming, and leading to a model that was pretty clunky, not agile, and would not help us making decisions. And this comment around manual tasks was applicable to pretty much everything, right? Everything was manual, everything Excel-based. A lot of non-FP&A tasks were managed by FP&A, including accruals or closed activities. So we had a lot of troubleshooting, right? Like a lot of mistakes, a lot of errors, variances were not very well explained, or it would take a very long time to do that. There were also like inconsistency in between the different forecasting reports, right? And the reason is people were using predominantly Excel, they were pulling data, very, very manual, a lot of errors. And that was leading to a pretty painful situation for the FP&A team, right? And a high attrition rate, like people were just, moving on because it was just too hard, meaning that the team was losing a lot of knowledge all the time with this turnover. So, we gave ourselves a pretty harsh rating of level 1, like very, very basic model. So the next slide, I'm going to discuss about what we've been doing about it. And, everything started with the implementation of a fully integrated planning process. Best in class, trying to leverage, what I've learned from EA in terms of best in class integrated planning process, with everything starting from strategic planning, right? High involvement from the executive team on trying to better understand our strategy and where we wanted to go as a company, which was then easier to implement a long-range plan, both a top-down and a bottom-up long-range plan, because that was fully informed by the strategy, right? So the finance team were not making up things anymore. They were not starting from a target. They were really starting from the strategy and the products we would implement, and then translating that into a financial long-range plan. In terms that made our annual planning much easier. So the 2024 annual planning, we just use the first year of the long-range plan, right? So then you need to allocate the budgets, create targets, but the backbone of the plan was just pulling from the long-range plan. So that makes the annual planning much faster and much more efficient. And then what we implemented is a lot of performance tracking, right? So we've been focusing a lot on operational metrics as opposed to just financial metrics, which are more of an output or lagging indicator. So we are really focusing on metrics, and we re-implemented monthly business reviews that are really focused not on the P&L but on the operational metrics that helps us, measure and track performance across the company. We also transfer most of the close-related activities to accounting and other shared services. And my team did some assessments. We save 3 working days a month per FP&A team members. So times 50, that's quite a lot of manpower that came back to the FP&A team. I've been focusing a lot on strengthening the corporate FP&A team. In most FP&A setups, everything starts from the corporate team, right? Like they set the targets, they set the long-range plan, and so you need a very strong team there to get everybody started, so that the business FP&A team can then pick up the ball and work with the business into the details. So we increased our headcount on the FP&A corporate FP&A team by 50%. Like I really reallocated resources to this team and hired a new leader who had a very strong skill set. Focusing on reporting, standardization is really the highlight here. We cut our reporting pack from 160 pages to 45. And there's like a lot more insights that we are able to deliver, even as we have less data, but it's more focused and relevant. And as a result, like we are seeing our attrition rate declining very significantly, and our engagement score going up. So I think we are right now, between a 3 and a 4. Like I think Hans is going to share the slides where you can find yourself on the matrix. But on a rating from 1 to 5, I think we are between 3 and 4. So not yet where we would like to be ideally, but in a much more stronger position than we were last year. And so on the next slide, I'm now discussing, okay, where are we going next, right? Like starting from the 3.5, how can we get to 5? Obviously, we all want to be the 5 out of 5 from a rating perspective. Well, we're going to focus a lot more on business accountability, making sure we have stronger ownership of the P&L from a business standpoint, very, very important, and something that is still missing in our company. I'm also trying to simplify the forecasting process, removing the details. Like we are very volatile business marketplace, like it's changing every day. We need to be able to reforecast in 48 hours, not in 2 weeks. So how are we going to do that? We're going to leverage technology. So I want to heavily invest in our systems, how we can use the data and feed our planning tool directly and automate more and more and more of the reporting. And then obviously I'm going to keep focusing on the team, making sure we have the right skill set on the team, and that's going to be predominantly around data analytics and coding. And also we'll look at location, like our location strategy, just to make sure we are operating from effective cost location. All right, that's what I had for you today.
Thank you very much, Aurélien. Great presentation, and thank you for taking us through the transformation journey of Lyft. And it shows the importance of getting the processes right to start off with, where you started off the integrated planning process and how you moved along that maturity, and now where you're thinking of going as well, which is just fantastic. Let us now look at what are the biggest barriers in our polling question. So ladies and gentlemen, if you can vote, please. Let us now ask you, what is the biggest barrier your organization faces to move to the next level of that maturity model? Is it leadership? Is it skill set? Are they processes, data and analytics, or is it technology? If you can answer, please. Is it leadership? Is it skill set? Is it processes? Is it data and analytics? Or is it technology? I will give you another couple of seconds to vote. So what is the biggest barrier your organization faces to move to the next level of maturity? Is it leadership? Is it skill set, processes, data and analytics, or technology? I will now close the vote and share the results, please. So the big one here is leadership, 33%, 25% is technology, and then skill set, process, data and analytics are 13, 13, and 16%. Aurélien, can I ask you for a quick insight on this, please?
Sure.
Aurélien, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can see it's kind of a mixed bag. Like I would say it's pretty balanced. Leadership is clear, right? Like you need the right leader in place in the organization to be able to drive the technology change. Obviously, very, very critical. Like relying on the right tools is super important. And the reason it's going to help you, deal with all this data and all the analytics. So I think it's pretty clear to me. Like I can absolutely relate to those scores. It's balanced, it's across the board, but leadership is key. That's the place where you need to start.
Absolutely. Culture is the key thing at the end of the day in any organization. So thank you very much for that insight. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for voting. Let me now hide this and let us move to the next session, where I will ask the other panelists to come and join me. But before we run through the question itself, let me remind everyone that we've got a very exciting Q&A session at the end, or towards the end of our webinar. So please, can you send your questions via the chat box? We will answer a few of the questions today. The rest that we can't answer live, we will definitely answer it to you straight to your email. All the panelists have committed to doing that. So please keep sending your questions. We've got a very exciting Q&A session coming up in a bit. Right, so our discussion question is, of course, data is a big challenge. So we want to know from our panelists, what challenges did you face as far as data is concerned in your transformation journey, and how did you deal with it? Can I ask Peter to start, please?
Sure. Yeah, and I think, well, data is the foundation. I think it's for us, it's the starting point. So the last couple of years, we spent a lot on that in ensuring that do we have the right master data, customer, product, also data which is outside the finance organization. So there's a lot of dependencies with other teams. So this is not a finance exercise. It's also about postings. It's about doing the right allocations. Maybe it's also about external data. So a lot comes to data, and there's also a lot on change management to make this happen. But I think it's crucial if you have that one single source of truth, that solid foundation. It prevents you having discussions, and from there on, you can also move more into your forward-looking analytics, your forecasting, your planning, your resource allocation. So it is key, but there are challenges. This is not an easy job. This is heavy lifting. This is the heavy lifting. So yeah, that's my view on data.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. Jan, your view, please.
Yeah, so I agree that data continues to be one of the largest challenges for most organizations, especially as it continues to grow exponentially. I think, as Peter pointed out, the master data aspect and talking the same language is really a critical piece to overcome that challenge. So when I work with organizations, I always bring data back to the point of which aspects do you really need to drive the insights? What are the KPIs that you're using to manage the business? And then what data do you need to organize to get to those KPIs? Trying to solve all data all at once typically ends up being a circular journey as data continues to be created.
Fantastic, great point there. Absolutely spot on. And finally, Aurelia.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Jan just said. I mean, proliferation of data is a huge issue. Like, we all have way too much data, and so we need to be able to process it, but more importantly, to select the right data points, like the right metrics we want to use, and then focus on them, making sure they are relevant to our business. But that's the biggest challenge. Like, data is coming from everywhere, and there's just too much. So we really need to be disciplined, focused, and use the right tools to deal with this data.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for your insight, ladies and gentlemen. Let us now move on to our last presenter for today. So, of course, last but not least, we have Jan Hill, who is from Business Transformation Advisory at Pigment, and today she will talk to us about transformation success factors. Over to you, Jan.
Thank you. So perhaps to kick things off, a brief introduction on my side. So as mentioned, I lead our business transformation advisory team here at Pigment. I've spent my career in FP&A, first as a practitioner, then as a team lead, spent time advising CFOs and VPs of FP&A as a management consultant. and then now for almost 5 years, working specifically in the planning technology space. Although my day-to-day is within that technology lens, I wanted to kind of start the conversation around success factors that are outside of technology. Because as we've seen in the maturity framework, while data and technology are certainly large topics and challenges, it is really an enabler to the larger transformation and to the success of it. So in the conversations that I've had and in working with organizations of all different sizes over the years, there are 3 main things I would call out here outside of technology that help to guide a successful transformation. And I think Peter, Aurelien, this came through very clearly in the stories that they told of their organizations, which is the first piece is starting with those outcomes in mind. So what is your process ambition? What does the strategic plan look like? Successful organizations typically begin with that vision. So while the technology you use or the way that you're conducting the process may change by region or by business unit, ensuring that the whole organization is speaking the same language and moving toward the same goals is critical to ensure that regardless of the path from point A to point B, everyone is moving toward point B. And going back to point A, where you are today, I think this is another critical aspect where I've seen a culture of change be eroded, is where organizations perhaps focus too much on how things have been done or what is already in place. We use the word journey quite a bit in transformation, and that's because it really is. So where you are today should be helpful to understand where to start and what that phasing looks like. But again, focus on the end in mind and where you're headed instead of necessarily, where you've been. The last piece, who you bring along, is critical. That leadership capability of moving the organization relies on not just being able to communicate to finance and to FP&A the value for each team and creating change champions there, but also engaging your business partners. So ensuring that all of the processes that you're transforming, all the technology that you're looking at, certainly it impacts the wider organization as none of these things happen in a silo. FP&A touches all aspects of the business. So ensuring that they're along on the journey is a critical aspect. But to move into technology and perhaps to set the scene a little bit about what that progression has looked like over the years and what it means today. If we look on the next slide, we'll see kind of the beginning of where planning and FP&A technology started, which is of course with spreadsheets. So we call that desktop planning. Mid-1980s, we see the rise of spreadsheets. Originally a personal productivity tool, but obviously because of the flexibility became used by many organizations and still is probably the #1 technology piece used today for decision making, which is something, of course, we're all working on to try and get a little bit more scale and more insight from the data. In the early 2000s, you see this need to bring together all of those data points into ERPs. So all of our legacy ERPs, which typically were on-premise, a little inflexible, I think we would all say, which drove a lot of the decision making back into spreadsheets, but a huge leap forward in terms of being able to create systems of record for data and having things in centralized locations. About 15 years ago, we saw the emergence of cloud. So this is where a lot of point solutions came into play. This is where we saw technology ecosystems begin to have different sources of truth pop up for each function, for each area, and again, you're getting scale, you're getting flexibility, but you still have this kind of disconnect across the organization. So what I hear today when it comes to the imperatives of what's needed for technology and a transformation are 3 things. I hear We need to be able to use all of this data to get insights. How do we line that up, get it in one place? We need to be able to make decisions as quickly as possible. So the decision timescales that used to be weeks or months have now turned into days and hours. How can we be more agile in the way that we are managing our business? And then the last piece, which is coming up quite a bit, is without adding headcount, we want to make sure that we can still be effective. What can we leverage to help us drive that efficiency, and how does AI perhaps come into play? So to address those imperatives, there are three key areas where I see technology playing a large role in enabling a transformation. So these are really the three key places where technology should take a center stage and be considered. The first one is realizing the value of all of the investments that an organization has already made in data. So being able to get your arms around all of those various data sources and speak a common language around how we will manage the business, what data we need to use to be able to do that. And as data continues to be created and external sources pulled in, how can we use technology to get our arms around that and create this source of decision-making truth that we've been promising in FP&A for many, many years. The second piece, more agility. So we hear a lot about scenario planning, and while spreadsheets and offline work and different point solutions do help creating individual scenarios, what I'm hearing a lot from organizations is the need for technology to bring it all together so that the impact of any one decision made in the business over here, those impacts are translated into what it means for other functions, other organizations, and what it means in terms of trade-offs. So that need for technology to really enable more robust analysis and help sort of satisfy the curiosity that we all have in FP&A to say, what if, and if we were to change this, being able to get those answers very quickly to keep pace with the business is certainly a large transformational aspect. And the last piece here, which is moving toward no surprises, there are so many surprises that continue to happen externally, that continue to happen with reorgs and acquisitions. So this need for technology to help us control for what we can. A lot of times that looks like automated variance analysis. It looks like having a clear view to the business drivers and being able to drill down on those without having to go make phone calls to multiple teams to say, hey, what's going on here? Why did this number change? Technology has a large part to play there. And I also see this as a place where AI can help. So as you're asking those questions about what happened and what's going to happen, AI can be a really great starting point to help you pull that data out, to slice and dice it in the ways that you need to, and do that quickly. So assuming that you are able to get your arms around the different data sources, have that in various views and scenarios, AI can be a great place to say, okay, let's dive into this and see what the data is telling me before I then start to think about what I do with that information. So I think it's a very exciting time for the role of technology in transformation. While it is an enabler, I do think it's also important to understand what all is out there as you think about what's in your toolkit for your personal transformation journey, what other organizations are doing. But certainly there's no one size fits all answer. Again, we use the word journey quite a bit, so I think there's iteration here. But certainly a lot to think about when it comes to the role of technology in transformation.
Fantastic, Jan. Brilliant. Great presentation. Of course, first of all, sharing with us the building blocks of transformation, and then how to elevate your organization towards that maturity model with technology. So absolutely brilliant. Thank you. Lots of great insight there for everyone to think of. Let us now move on to a question that is very much technology related, and let me ask the other fellow panelists to come and join us as well. Is AI a big factor in your transformation discussion these days? Can I ask Peter to start this, please?
Well, a big factor, yes, we're talking a lot about it. So, but I think we are developing in this area. So we have a lot of focus on our process, on you know, what do we really want to do, but also how to leverage indeed AI. So we're indeed developing prompting in our reporting, chat GPT functionalities, predictive forecasting, but maybe more as a second opinion, like, okay, we have our current forecast process, and we're using AI to challenge that and to benchmark that. So that's a bit what we're currently doing. But I think this is such a big topic that yeah, there needs to be more to come. But we're on top of it and try to apply as much as possible.
Yeah, as Bezos said, we've only scratched 5% of what is there to come, and maybe even less. So thank you for that, Peter. Aurélien, you talked about potentially looking at AI in the future. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so we are right now leveraging more like, you know, machine learning capabilities just to you know, analyze historical trends and use that as a baseline for forecast. But Gen AI is obviously a lot more exciting. So we are looking into, you know, what's available to us, but it's just a project right now. Like there's no like we are very interested, but it's still early days.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that. Jan, can I get your thoughts on this, please?
Yes, absolutely. So AI is, of course, a big discussion point, and I think where I've seen the leading organizations going when it comes to AI is, you know, yes, of course, keep it as a focus, but a reminder that it is another aspect of technology, right? So there are places it should play and there are places it should not. And I think we've all probably learned through past decisions that we'd like to undo, that trying to fix a process problem or a culture problem with a technology first attitude is not going to drive the right results that we want. So thinking about where it should play, where it shouldn't is going to be critical, but that's, again, that's the how, that's not the why or the what of the transformation.
Brilliant insight from all three of you there. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Let us now move to the next part of our meeting. But before that, let me just remind people, our audience, please keep sending your questions. We will answer some of them slightly in a couple of minutes. The rest will be answered to you by email. So please keep sending them even towards the end of the meeting as well. So now is conclusion time. So can I just go around the house and ask Peter, what will be your key takeaway or conclusion?
I think, well, first of all, great discussions, and it's nice to, you know, to share our thoughts in this way. So I really appreciate it. I think the questions were really relevant, and coming back to that data question, I think Jen was mentioning that, you know, start with maybe the end in mind. So what kind of decision-making situations do you have in your organization? I think this is really spot on, because this is also about, so what do you need for performance evaluation? What kind of decisions are you making? What's the purpose of forecasting? What's the purpose of planning? And what kind of decisions are you making with that? And the same for resource allocation. So I think, you know, the clearer you get those decision-making situations with personas, use cases, I think the better you understand to calculate back more or less what kind of data, what kind of technology, what kind of organization do you need for that. So, and then it has to be a mix. Then you need to say, okay, this is what we need. This is our ambition, and let's set ourselves that ambition and have a plan to get there. But yeah, but starting with the end in mind, I think this is something that is, and your decision-making situations is something that is really, really relevant here.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Aurélien, quick one from you.
Yeah, quick one. I was very inspired by Peter's story, like having a team dedicated to transformation and process. I'm sure makes a huge difference. So I think that's really something I'm interested in exploring on our side as well.
Brilliant. Jan, your conclusion, please.
Yes, so I think with all of the conversation we've had today, which has been a great discussion around a culture of change and the iterative journey here, one thing that has really stuck out to me is this need to ensure that all of the personas and the stakeholders involved understand that final outcome and what's in it for them. So ensuring that the way that we're communicating the value of the transformation in a way that is of a personal benefit to different groups is striking me as very important right now, just to overcome any sort of change fatigue and ensure that we're all moving in the same direction, thinking about it from different lenses.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. So thank you very much for that. Ladies and gentlemen, we now come to our Q&A session. Again, please keep sending your questions. We will answer all of them, some of them now, and most of them via email. So we've got some exciting question. I think the first one goes, of course, to Peter. Peter, of course, your organization is huge, very similar to our organization, but how do you start and where do you start a transformation? We are stuck in the 1950s is a bit of an insight that I'm giving to you. Any insight you can give us on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. I think what we did is a couple of years ago, really setting up a business blueprint, really putting things down on paper. So the ambition slide that you saw, that's part of that pack of that documentation, and we approach FP&A also a bit of in a transactional process kind of way. That of course it's not a transactional process, but doing this, it forces yourself in really writing things down in different process levels, really going to the lowest level of detail, what steps need to be done when you do FP&A. And yeah, I think that really helps. It forces you in that thinking. But then also making clear, okay, what do we want to achieve with it? So what's the ambition? So what's in it for the organization? What's in it for me? And that helps the organization to get along with that thinking. So yeah, I think that helps us. That really made a good start of it.
Yeah, and as you mentioned and Jan mentioned, with the end in mind always, what do you want to achieve, and then you sort of circle back to that. So brilliant there, Peter. Thank you very much for that. Aurélien, we come to you next. Of course, transformation requires investment. What sort of investment were required or is required in your transformation journey, and how did you go about securing any of that?
Yeah, it's mainly been around people. To be honest, we've been able to just shuffle resources as opposed to just add money to the table. Like I think people, by refocusing people on the right task, you can save a lot of time and resources, and then reallocate them to what really matter. So it's been a lot of people investment, but without incremental budget. I think the next phase of growth and transformation is going to require more, like hard dollars, just to probably look at our systems and implement things. But so far, from the 1 to 3.5 rating on the maturity assessment model, we've been able to do that without spending any more money.
Fantastic, fantastic. Of course, refocusing what people do, how they do it, working smarter does make time, and re-looking at your processes as you did as well, with the integrated planning meant that, there's much more time in the bank, and then how do you utilize them, which is fantastic. Our final question, of course, goes to Jan, and it is a bit technology related, and the person has talked about, with reference to skill set, and they're talking data analytics and coding. What new skills and tool sets should FP&A business partner develop to be effective in a mature integrated FP&A function? I thought that's quite relevant given where the tool as well is moving. Any sort of thought on that, Jan?
Yeah, I mean, my first thought on it is that it's going to become even more critically important for FP&A to develop that data analytics skill set, because what I'm seeing is that if that investment isn't made in FP&A, then other business units, other functions are creating it or hiring it in-house. And FP&A is starting to lose that seat at the table and lose that visibility to the centralized point of insights. So I think it's absolutely critical to develop that in FP&A. And what I would say is that that's certainly a place where technology can do a lot of the legwork in terms of reconciling the data, getting you to a point where you're able to start the analysis. But it's certainly helpful to create this kind of continuous learning culture around what's out there, how to use it. There are plenty of resources and even just some lunch and learns, right, to help folks understand what these new technologies look like, how to use them, what's under the hood. I think we all got into FP&A because we are curious, analytical people. So these topics are certainly interesting to us if we make them available to our talent.
And you know, that roadmap that you shared in your slide there tells us how FP&A is evolving. And if you don't evolve, if you don't transform at the same sort of pace with it, and now we're talking machine learning and AI within our tools, it's not being an expert in it, but it's understanding what it does, because the tool is going to help you. Of course, then the role becomes irrelevant or redundant. So yeah, absolutely spot on there. Thank you very much, panelists, for the insight and the answering the question. Unfortunately, that's all we have for today in terms of questions. Couple of last slides here just to let you know. You've got the link there. This is where the FP&A Trends Maturity Model is. You can map your organization there and see where you are at. I had a question about how do you measure 3.5. Of course, it's a guess, it's an assessment. Have a look at this and you will know where you are. Couple of dates for your diary: June the 19th, where we're talking about FP&A business partnering. What is that formula for success? And then on July the 10th, we're talking about our global survey, which we do every year anyway. So what is coming out? What is new there? What has changed from last year? Please put that in your diary. Good time now for me to say thank you. Thank you very much to our technology sponsor Pigment for making this absolutely available to everyone. Thank you to our panelists for all of their hard work throughout the last few weeks to put together this fantastic webinar, fantastic insight, slides, as well as, you know, all the questions and answers. So panelists, thank you very much. And of course, thank you to our audience for attending today. Hope this has been beneficial. Here's a few tips and tricks as to how you can keep in touch with us. And of course, do link up with our panelists as well on LinkedIn. Just to remind you, I'm going to close this session now. You will get a feedback session. Please give us 30 seconds. Tell us how we did, but also tell us what else would you like to hear from us in the next few webinars. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I say good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you very much for attending and listening, and we hope to see you at the next time. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Goodbye for now. Have a great one. Bye-bye.